When I first moved to Colorado Springs, honestly, it felt like a dream. It was big mountains, adventure everywhere, but it still had that smaller town feel. Now, I gotta say, after 20 years, I've kind of been having the thought, is Colorado Springs now have a lot of the things that I really wanted to avoid when I first moved here? So it's got me thinking a little bit, is it time for a move? Okay, now I've got to admit that it wasn't fully my 100% decision to move to Colorado Springs. I was in the military at the time, I was an officer in the Army, and Colorado Springs was one of my choices of where I could select for my next duty assignment. Now, having been from the Midwest, I knew I didn't want to go anywhere in the Midwest because I just didn't really enjoy it very much. And I had went to college at Colorado State up in Fort Collins in northern Colorado. In addition to that, I had spent some summertime out in Glacier National Park in northwestern Montana, and I had just honestly throughout that time fallen in love with the mountains. So when I got the opportunity to come to Colorado Springs, I thought, man, that is the perfect scenario. So the Army is what brought me here, but on top of that, the decision was really finalized by just all the outdoor adventure stuff. I love being in the mountains. You know, I've been in Colorado Springs for 20 years now, so I was a lot younger back then, obviously. I was on the trails running all the time. I was really into climbing. I got into mountaineering as well. Had a dirt bike I loved to ride on the trails in the mountains. So everything about Colorado Springs and what it offered with access to the mountains, that's the reason I wanted to be in Colorado Springs. But it was a little bit more than that too. I liked Colorado Springs because it still had a smaller town feel. At that point in time, in 2005, Colorado Springs had a population of about 390,000 people or so, under 400,000 people. So it was a bigger town for sure, but it wasn't a huge, megaplex of a city. It still felt small. You still felt like you had community everywhere. I was part of a climbing club and some other clubs. They were just really easy to find and get into. So you had this small town community feel. You had all the mountain adventure you could possibly want out your back door to the west. When I moved to Colorado Springs, I was adamant I had to be on the west side of town. I lived over by Garden of the Gods when I first moved here, lived there for a number of years, and just truly loved it. And it wasn't congested. You went to your trailhead and there was maybe one or two other people there, but there weren't a lot of people. The example that I'll give that always comes to my mind and I tell everybody about is the incline. If you know anything about Colorado Springs, you've done any research, you probably know what the incline is over in Manitou Springs. And it used to be that you would drive to the incline at noon on a Saturday, drive up to the parking lot, which was right at the bottom of it. You didn't have to pay for it. You didn't have to take a bus to get up there or a shuttle. And there might be like 3 or 4 other cars there. It was something that only kind of the hardcore people did, if you will. It wasn't this kind of touristy thing like it is now. Now, fast forward to 2025, I don't ever do the incline anymore. I think the only time I've done the incline in the last 3 or 4 years was when we actually did it for a video for this YouTube channel. So check that out if you haven't after you finish watching this one. It's a great exercise. I love it, but it's just gotten so crowded. And that's not the only trailhead. You go to Ute Valley Park on the weekend, or honestly, even in the evening, sometimes during the week, during the day, it's a small parking lot and it's full. You go to all these parks across town, it's just gotten busy. So those things that I loved about it have started to change a little bit. And it really got me thinking, like, it's different, but why is it different? What are these feelings I'm having? Like, what's kind of bringing all this on? So I really started to think about what's different about it right now. And the number one thing, when you distill everything down about Colorado Springs and why to someone that's been here for 20 years, it feels different, it really comes down to one word for me at least, and it's congestion. So the city has just grown a lot. 20 years is a long period of time. So every city in America, not every city, but a lot of cities across America have grown a lot in the last 20 years. Now, Colorado Springs proper, inside the city limits, has went from under 400,000 people to almost 500,000 people. So you're talking a 30% increase in the last 20 years, and that's just inside the city limits. If you look at the greater El Paso County area, it's grown at even a faster rate than what the city has. So it's just gotten congested. And what does that really equate to? Its traffic has gotten a lot worse in Colorado Springs as I kind of think about it. The housing costs have went up. Now, housing costs have went up across the country. We all know that. Since COVID, costs have went up a lot. But, I'll just give you an example here. I've been in real estate on the sales side of it for almost 15 years now. And I remember when I got into real estate, the median sales price was $242,000 in Colorado Springs. And now it's $500,000. So it's more than doubled over the last 15 years. So those housing costs have definitely went up a ton. So it's congested. You just have more people out there. Those trailheads that I talked about earlier, They're just a lot more crowded. It just doesn't have that open feel for me that it used to. Now, at the same time, I got to caveat that and say, we have people we're helping move to Colorado Springs every single week. And most of those people, if not, I'd probably say all those people, they don't feel that same change that I do because they're coming probably from a place that's a little bit more congested or crowded than even what Colorado Springs is currently in 2025. So they don't have that point of reference of the change within the city. They're just comparing it to where they're currently at now. And that's why people still absolutely love Colorado Springs. And when we talk about the congestion, it's not just Colorado Springs, it's the whole Front Range of Colorado. Denver during COVID absolutely blew up. It was amazing the amount of influx of population into the Denver area, the Denver metro area, all the way up in Fort Collins. It started to expand north up towards the Wyoming border, all the way down through Colorado Springs. You know, I'll talk a little bit more about this later, but coming back from a recent trip to the Northern Rockies, we were driving back through Wyoming, crossed over into the Colorado border, and it's not very far from Wyoming, between Wyoming and Fort Collins. When you start to hit a lot of development, I-25 changes to 3 lanes both directions, 3 or 4 lanes. There's construction, and it's just constant development all the way from north of Fort Collins until I got home down to Colorado Springs. So it's not just Colorado Springs, it's the whole Front Range of Colorado that started to grow. But again, it really just it made me ask this honest question to myself of, is there a better place now for myself and my family? Now, I'm just like everybody else. Whenever I start to look at a new place, you get kind of excited about it. Maybe you read a news article about it. We all do the same thing. We jump on our computers, we start checking out Zillow to see what houses are out there and what the prices are. Of course, we all go to YouTube nowadays. It's probably how you found this video, checking out Colorado Springs. So that's what I did. I went down rabbit hole after rabbit hole, checking out all these other cities. I even talked to ChatGPT about it to try to figure out what other city would maybe fit all these parameters that I had. And those parameters really were still very similar to the ones that I had 20 years ago when I found Colorado Springs. So, you look at the housing cost and everything's went up since COVID. We know that housing across the Rocky Mountain region has definitely went up. I 100% wanted to be in the mountains. There was no doubt about that. So I started to look at cities that were a little bit smaller than, actually quite a bit smaller than Colorado Springs, but may offer a lot of the same stuff. So I looked at Missoula, Kalispell, Coeur d'Alene in Idaho, even thought about Flagstaff down in Arizona for a little bit. So we check out these cities in the Northern Rockies, my family and I, we check out these cities, we're looking at everything online, and we're thinking, man, the thing is, you really don't understand what a city's like until you get into it. So on top of all the online research that I did, we actually took a family vacation and we said, you know what, let's take the camper. And we took a multi-week trip up through the Northern Rockies. We went up through Coeur d'Alene and all through Western Montana. And we checked out all these areas with kind of this list of criteria that we had of what was going to be kind of the perfect scenario for us. What would that look like? And does it even exist out there? And we compared all those cities to Colorado Springs. Now, what we found out as we looked at all these cities and drove through them is there's a huge difference between a population of 500,000 and 50,000. That's pretty obvious. But again, until you actually get there and drive through the city and you see what amenities are there, you really don't have that great of a feel for it. And also we realized in just even some of our online research that, as I mentioned earlier, housing costs have went up everywhere since COVID. It's not like that's just a Colorado Front Range thing. So even towns like, I'll use Kalispell, Montana as an example. So this is far northwest Montana. It's it's the west side of Glacier National Park. It's about 50 to 60,000 people, but it's the fastest growing area in Montana right now. So you see the same thing there. You see new housing developments going up. You see a huge influx of people. And because it has historically been such a small town, you still feel some of that congestion that you feel here in Colorado Springs. So housing has changed everywhere. And because people during COVID really had this opportunity to move around by working from home, even some of these what would have been historically really small, quaint towns have started to grow across the Northern Rockies, which, as I took a step back and looked at it, those are really kind of the places that I thought about. Maybe that's a little bit better than Colorado Springs is for me right now. So we get back from our trip and we do what everybody does when you're trying to evaluate a decision, kind of a database decision, and you're really trying to kind of lay everything out. So we put together a spreadsheet and we made a list of pros and cons. Now, this list is much more extensive than what I'm going to talk about right now. I'm just going to kind of hit some highlights, but when we talk about Colorado Springs, the pros of it are you still have great access to the mountains. There's no arguing that just west of Colorado Springs is all the mountain adventure you would possibly need. Now, there's also some urban I guess I'll say urban adventure too. So Colorado Springs, because it's grown so much as a city, now you have good dining places, you have better entertainment, better recreational things to do that aren't just mountain oriented. And you're right down the road from a huge major A city like Denver, so major sporting things, big concerts, anything you want to do. Colorado Springs is honestly, I still believe it's that perfect balance between urban stuff to do and mountain adventure. I don't think there's any other city in the country that matches Colorado Springs when it comes to that. You're 2 hours from literally the best skiing in the world, many would argue. So, when you check out the Northern Rockies, yeah, it's cold and it's snowy and there's mountains, but you don't have the skiing infrastructure, if you will, or that number of resorts that you have here in Colorado. So you can't compare any of these other areas to the skiing that Colorado brings you or the winter sporting on that side of it. Another big thing are jobs. Colorado Springs not only is a larger city, so just has more job opportunity than a lot of the smaller towns throughout the Rockies, but the job market here is thriving because of the defense sector, IT sector, cybersecurity. These aren't just service and retail-based jobs, while those are certainly available too. With the commercial growth that we've had, these are high-paying six-figure jobs that are, I kind of want to say, readily available in Colorado Springs if you're qualified, and you're not going to find that in these other smaller towns throughout the Rockies. So then on the flip side, what are the cons of Colorado Springs when it's compared to these other potential areas? So we've already talked a little bit about cost of living has gotten higher across Colorado, not just Colorado Springs, but a lot of that is driven by the housing cost. If you look at other cost of living things, we've done a lot of videos on that you can check out. If you look at other aspects, Colorado isn't really that much more expensive, and sometimes it's even less, but housing cost has went up a lot. So that's a big factor that is a little bit of a con for Colorado Springs. Another one is, it's what I hit on before. The biggest thing for me, it's just that congestion. So when I go to a trailhead to go for a run, it's going to be a lot busier than what it has been historically, especially in 2005 when I first got here. So just that congestion side of things that's probably the biggest sticking point for me that's a con. And that kind of dovetails into the last one that I'll say, and that's just that Colorado Springs has gotten a little bit more of a big city feel than what it did. Now we can look at the stats and look at all the data, and yeah, Colorado Springs is 100% grown. A lot of cities have, but for me personally, that biggest change is that the feel is much different now. It used to be kind of a little bit more small town feel, and now it's just starting to feel like kind of a bigger city. Now, I will also caveat that by saying that if you truly look for community within Colorado Springs, and I think it's like this in a lot of cities, if you're truly trying to find your own community, you can find it. It might just take a little bit more work than it used to 20 years ago here in Colorado Springs. And as you work through some of these pros and cons for Colorado Springs, it's only natural to think about the pros and cons for some other areas too, right? So if we look at a city like Missoula, again, northwestern Montana, a lot smaller than Colorado Springs, less than 100,000 people probably. It is a university town. Montana State's there, so you have kind of that cultural aspect of having a university there. And one thing that I love about some other parts of the Rockies that Colorado Springs doesn't give you is you're surrounded by what I'll say mountain adventure is in some of these other towns. When you're on the Front Range to the east of Colorado Springs, there's not a whole lot going on. It's kind of just flat land till you get back to Missouri probably. So there's, everything is to the west, where in some of these areas, you're really surrounded by mountain adventure. So, cost of living is a little bit lower in some areas, maybe even a little bit more mountain activity to take advantage of, but you probably don't have, as many Walmarts around town or whatever it might be. You don't have some of those amenities, and you're not going to have the sporting events up in Denver or the major entertainment that you have in the Colorado Springs and Denver area. So it's only natural, and I think it's great to evaluate not only Colorado Springs for you personally, but also some of the other areas that you might be considering. And I think that really is something you need to think about is, and this is what I've had to do, is what is it that I'm missing? What is it that I'm ultimately looking for? And then if I found that 20 years ago, but I don't feel the same now, what is it that I'm missing? What's different right now? And when I really took that step back and thought about what am I missing? What's the feeling that I'm missing right now? Honestly, it really comes down to just the simple fact that I like a place that's a little bit less crowded, and I like a place that maybe is a little bit smaller town feel and that isn't developing as fast as what Colorado Springs is. But then you got to ask yourself, am I being silly about this? Do I want my cake and I'm trying to eat it too? So I've done the research. I've went down the rabbit holes. I talked to Chad about it. I even took my family on that multi-week trip vacation to explore other areas. And at the end of the day, are there things about Colorado Springs 20 years ago that I miss? Definitely, 1000%, there certainly are. But when you evaluate everything and other places to live, Colorado Springs is definitely still an amazing place to live. So I'm not sure what comes next, but I know I'm not the only one asking these questions. Colorado Springs is still an amazing city that has a ton to offer, but it's changing. And honestly, it's something we've got to talk about. So let's keep the conversation going. Drop a comment, subscribe if you're wrestling with the same thing.